There we go. It's just me. So we're going to try and do this in under half an hour to get some time back, but we'll see. But either way, hey everyone. So welcome to this talk on MongoDB and .NET Aspire, where we'll hopefully answer the question, can you use MongoDB with .NET Aspire? Spoiler alert, the answer is yes. I'm Luce Carter, developer advocate at MongoDB, but I just love sharing things with you, so hopefully this will go as well as the sunny weather outside. So what we're going to talk about today? Well, we're going to start off with what is MongoDB. Then we'll go into, well, why would you use MongoDB? Because that's kind of important, right? We'll answer the elephant in the room question of, well, what about Cosmos? Then we'll go into the crux of stuff. You know, this is why we're here, right? The MongoDB with .NET Aspire content. Then I'll just share some useful resources at the end. So that'll include things like links to things you see today. So I've seen in some of the other talks, like, oh, can I get the link to this GitHub? Everything will be in a resource at the end, so you'll be able to get access to it. So don't worry. So let's start off then with what is MongoDB. So if you're here watching, you may already know what MongoDB is, but I learned a long time ago to just both as a speaker and a content creator, and also actually as a learner, to never assume any knowledge. So I just want to take a very brief few minutes to just discuss MongoDB a little bit so that we're all on the same page as we go on this fun journey together. I'm trying to resist making any puns about Aspire. So a document is basically a document database, right? That is the crux of what MongoDB is. So it's similar to a key value database, but it supports more data types. And so, it can do all sorts of different ones, so not just, the basic, almost like string to string. And it stores information in documents rather than tables, rows, and columns that you might be used to from SQL databases. So you have a collection of documents rather than a table of rows. And it's general purpose. If you could see the breadth of different themes of our, I can't think of the term, but if you just see the different areas that our customers work in, it's everything from banking to gaming to retail to automotive and beyond. So it's really just helpful and general purpose. You can use it for all sorts of things. It's got a flexible schema. So if you want to have different shaped databases with different fields and values in it, that's okay. Don't panic though. If the thought of a flexible schema sets your alarm bells off, you can set some rules about what your schema should look like and any data validation rules. And something that's a historical advantage over previous ones, which I appreciate, isn't really a case of relational databases anymore, but historically it couldn't support horizontal scaling. So historically, as you see, MongoDB is a document database. And these days it can be, you can have it on premise as an enterprise or community edition, or you can have Atlas, which used to be our cloud product, and it still is our sort of cloud software as a service or cloud database as a service. But actually, we've released something in preview recently where you can actually deploy Atlas to local as well. So that's really exciting. But as I mentioned, Atlas isn't just a database anymore. Atlas is a whole suite, and we're sort of the world's first developer data platform. Essentially, it's more than just your database. So we have the Atlas device SDK. So if you're used to things like mobile, I know I am. I'm a MAUI person through and through. Atlas device SDKs, you might have heard the term Realm. This is the, these days Realm is what we refer to as the local database on the device. So if you've got devices that might go on and offline, having Atlas device SDKs with that Realm local database just means it won't go offline, and it will handle all the syncing between Atlas and your local database for you. Then we've got Charts, which is our visualization product. So you can just point charts at one of your data sources and collections, and it will automatically give you a bunch of charts that you can create. You can then drop in your fields into the different slots that you want and build up those charts. So it's a really easy way to visualize your data without needing to implement any kind of complex third-party graphing. Maddie, if you're watching, me and your fantasy football league dashboard need to talk. And then we've got analytics. So for those of you that work in enterprise, for example, and care about things like analytics, if you use something like Power BI, we have connectors for that. So you can keep an eye on your analytics as well. And then search. So we have two types of search products. So we've got Atlas Text Search and Atlas Vector Search. So Atlas Text Search is our full text search product built on top of Apache Lucene's full text search engine. But obviously, as you'd imagine, it's been optimized to use MongoDB, and so it will work to keep it as simple as possible. You just specify the search index, and it will then be able to search that within your data. And then we have Atlas Vector Search. So this has obviously become quite prominent as Gen AI and machine learning and everything have become more and more well-known and used. Vector Search, MongoDB's place in that is twofold. So we can act as both your vector database and your vector search. So you can store your embeddings, so the vector representations of your data, so numbers in three-dimensional space. You can store those embeddings in your collection, in your document, alongside the data it represents. But then you can, create a vector search index, tell it about that embeddings field, and then use it in the search. So you pass it a bunch of vectors to represent what you're searching for. Vector search will then use the embeddings field in your database to do the comparisons to then find the sort of closest meanings in space, and that's vector search. I could spend ages talking about these, but we're here to talk about Aspire, right? But before we start getting into any code stuff, I just want to briefly talk about why MongoDB. You've heard about what it is, but why? Well, basically summarize it as MongoDB and document databases make life easier. There's high availability. I won't get too technical, but basically MongoDB clusters are made up of 3 nodes that are kept in sync with all the data between them. So if the primary node goes down, one of the secondaries will get promoted to primary so that you'll have high availability. You won't even know it's happening unless you happen to read the logs. So it's got high availability. It's also highly flexible, as we touched on before. Documents in a collection could have a different size and shape between them. So this supports flexibility as your application development evolves and your needs change. But as I mentioned earlier, don't panic. You can implement schemas and validations as you wish. Just like with SQL databases, it's scalable vertically. So if the server needs more hardware to perform because you're doing a great job or whatever, it can do that. But it can also scale horizontally. As I mentioned before, horizontal scaling was less common previously in relational databases. So horizontal scaling is one of the big benefits of MongoDB and NoSQL databases. MongoDB does this with something called sharding. So you basically break your data up into groups, a bit like aisles or sections in a library, and you pick how you break it up based on a shard key. And then when you're searching for something, for example, in reads, if you've millions of documents, it will know from the shard key exactly which server to visit in your shards to find what it wants. So rather than reading through a million documents, it just knows exactly where to go, which just helps time instead of searching more of them. Then lastly, readability. So documents look like JSON. So under the hood, it's binary JSON. So it's basically JSON, but with more data types like arrays, embedded objects or embedded documents, depending on the terms are interchangeable, and dates and all sorts of other ones. But they look like JSON documents. So those of us that are used to the C family of languages like C#, Python, Java, etc., this will automatically be quite readable, which just is great. And you can just summarize this really as build better apps faster. In the past, the most expensive part of databases, if you're interested in that kind of thing, look up Moore's law. Essentially, the most expensive part was the hardware, especially storage. These days, you might know that storage is super cheap. Like you can go and get a 2 terabyte SSD for your Xbox, pretty cheap. So the cost of storage and processes is much, much lower. So actually now the most expensive part of application development is you, the developer. So why not make it simpler and easier, right? I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of simpler. Okay, so we're almost on to the Aspire bit, but I just want to touch on Atlas. So I mentioned it a little bit. So as you saw, it's kind of our full suite. So it's fully managed multi-cloud database. Now, obviously, we're Microsoft people, so we're probably more into Azure, but I know you can do .NET with AWS and Google as well. But as we saw before, it expands into more than just a database. But why does that matter to .NET developers? Well, just a very quick note, you can deploy to Azure if you want to. So this one's deployed in North Europe. And so you can not only enjoy Aspire, but you can make use of Azure as well if you want to use that stack. And even better, this is an M0 tier cluster, which is our free forever tier, that doesn't require you to even share credit card details. If you just want to try this out, it's fantastic for just playing around and doing some proof of concept before you need anything more. And what's cool as well is once you have a cluster deployed, there's actually sample data as well. So you can get sample data in all sorts of different shapes and sizes to play around with. So if you don't have any yet, that's okay. Just click this nice big green load sample data button. But you're .NET developers, and you might be wondering, as do many others, when we talk to the community, what about CosmosDB? It's worth covering this question because it does come up a lot. So as you might know, obviously CosmosDB, there is a version called CosmosDB with MongoDB API. This has been around since about 2017, and it's great. But the issue is it's more of an emulation of MongoDB, so it imitates the features and doesn't have full compatibility. I think compatibility-wise, depending on whether you use with MongoDB API or the vCore version, it's anywhere between like 3 and 5 and maybe more versions behind. And one of the things that we see a lot is that people raise issues with the CosmosDB deployment to MongoDB and to us ourselves, thinking that we're behind it, and then you end up wasting more time trying to get help from the right people. But that's fine. What works for you? I'm not here to dictate to you which product to use. I just wanted to address Cosmos because it does come up a lot. And which you use is up to you. I would just say that for the full experience, MongoDB and Atlas is definitely the way to go. Okay. Just lastly, some of you might be thinking, well, why would I pay for Atlas if you want to move beyond M0? Why would I pay for Atlas when I have an agreement with Microsoft, for example, that maybe gives you Azure credits? Well, just a heads up, we have a pay-as-you-go subscription available in the Azure Marketplace on the portal. So you can just go in and use your Azure credits to pay for MongoDB. You just set this up, it creates that SaaS subscription for you, and away you go. Okay. We've done it. We've talked about MongoDB and Atlas and some background info. Now let's get on to the big stuff and looking at the ways that you can work with MongoDB and .NET Aspire. And we're going to answer that big question, which is, does MongoDB work with .NET and Aspire? Well, I'm here talking to you, right? So I think we can safely say that the answer is, well, yes. And this is thanks to an amazing component. I know this screen is a bit crunched together, don't worry. But this is thanks to the work of an amazing member of the community who made this for us, and so it's available for you to use. So yeah, we have Aspire with Atlas, and if you run the project, you'll get a dashboard just like you've been seeing throughout today. So we've got the MongoDB resource, there's a web project running, and there's a container in the background. But you actually have 2 ways to use MongoDB with Aspire. So you can use it as a container that spins up as part of your project, or you can use MongoDB Atlas. And as we've seen before, MongoDB Atlas is pretty cool. So let's look at a demo. So we're going to come out slides, we're going to risk it, and we're going to go into demo. So we're going to go to, here we go. So we're in a solution here. This is actually the code for the matches up to the dashboard you just saw. But it's pretty straightforward. So if we come into the app host program, we're just saying add MongoDB. So this comes from a package called, I think it's aspire.hosting.mongodb. It follows the same naming conventions as the other hosting packages. So just look for MongoDB with Aspire, find the hosting package. You'll then be able to say add MongoDB, give it a name for how you want it to appear on the dashboard, add a database if you wish, and then you've got it there to run. Then in my web project, this is where I'm able to consume MongoDB. So this gives you access to other things. So now this is the Aspire MongoDB driver. So this is the new Get package intended for the consumption project. So we just call add MongoDB client. We pass it the name of that database or the connection name, in this case, DrinksDB. Now, as you might have seen from other content today, there's different ways to get your connection string through to your database. So connection names sometimes can be used to go into some of your configuration, like JSON configuration files, to get out the connection string. But we don't need to in this case, because with MongoDB client, one of the things that you can pass to it is a MongoDB settings object. So I've just gone in and said, well, my connection string is my Atlas URL. Don't worry, I'm not doxing myself here. We love security, so this is a temporary user that will get deleted automatically. But essentially, this is your MongoDB Atlas connection string. So just like that, it's now talking to Atlas. So if we go ahead and run this, we should be able to see it in action, hopefully. We'll see what happens. Oh, the demo god's going to be on my side. Now, this isn't the most exciting demo I'll see today because I can't design websites. That's okay. Right, I'm just going to move this over to this screen. There we go. So we've got it up and running, and we have the same dashboard as you saw earlier. If we then click into localhost, we have a really boring Drinks Finder app. Basically, out of the box, Blazor application with the nav menu removed and a couple of boxes added. But what we can do is we can search for a location as a latitude and longitude and enter a drink. So all this is doing is basically finding a location using the Google Services, Google Places API. The code for this will be available in the resources at the end. So if you actually want to see the crux of like the Google stuff, you can. But we're going to use this latitude and longitude here. This is actually the lat long for building 25 on the Microsoft campus because I love that building. You can get, if anyone's curious, if you go on Google Maps and right click somewhere, it'll give you the coordinates at the top of the menu. And then we're going to search my favorite drink, hot chocolate. I don't drink alcohol, so hot chocolate it is. So what this has done, it's gone ahead and pulled in a bunch of information about the nearest places within Redmond that will sell hot chocolates and just listed the names. And if we go ahead and look at Compass, which is our free GUI tool, and you can see here that the stuff's already here. So we can refresh it, I think. There we go, we've got more documents now. But yes, essentially the Google Places API has given us loads of stuff. And because we pointed it to Atlas, inside the services code, we were able to access the MongoDB driver thanks to that Aspire client. So we can just say, hey, shove this information into Atlas. Now we have all this stuff here, like the name, the address, geometry. And geometry is interesting because it's got location and it's got latitude and longitude. Now, we've already seen this. You might be thinking, yeah, okay. But as you saw from here, names is just really boring. Because we're using Atlas, we can take advantage of some of the extra Atlas things that, because our Aspire is talking to Atlas, we can take advantage of that out of the box. So if I come into here, so this is charts. You can get to it from charts.mongodb.com, or if you create a new database cluster like you saw in the image earlier, in that overview page, which we'll see again in a second, you can just go to charts. So I've already linked to my data source here just to save time, but essentially it's pointing to that drinks.favorites collection. We can then pick a chart type. So there's loads of different types that chart supports, as I talked about earlier, but we're going to pick, oh look, geospatial. Let's do a scatter map. So what this is going to do is give us some values that we can give it. So we happen to know that there's latitude and longitude here. So we can drag that on. It knows that's the latitude, so now we plot it the longitude. Then it will update. And boom, we have our map showing the circles. So these are the five nearest hot chocolate places to building 25, which we can save and close that. Hopefully this will work first time. If we click embed, authentic. Oh, hang on, we need to share it. It. It's just there we go. So now if we click these three dots here, there's actually an embed button. So we can go through and say, okay, well, I want an iframe. You can go through this in your own time, but for the sake of saving time, we're just going to quickly grab these, go back into our to just shove the iframe into our application in home.razor. So we can just say, well, I don't want to list the places as a name anymore. What I want to do is comment this out. Whoa. There we go. Let's not delete it. Let's just comment it out. Then just add that iframe. I should go up here. Open the iframe. So if we run that now, oh, what have I done? I'm breaking things now. There we go. Right. So if we run this, hopefully it will just work. This is live mode though, right? So anything can happen. I've seen them anyway, so if it doesn't work, you'll just have to take my word for it. But if we go to our web project, because we've combined it with Atlas, okay, the size is all wrong. Okay, it's not working because we're live, but you saw the map is there, and I can show you, I can put a picture in the gist for the useful resources later to show you the map working. But essentially, yes, if you want to, you can take advantage of Atlas script football to use pretty charts, because why would you not? So that's pretty straightforward stuff. As I said, if you want to go through the actual code, I'll share a link later on. Okay, so let's go back to slides. Let's see what it does. There you go. I'm thinking about it. There we go. Okay. So that was MongoDB and pointing to Atlas. So that answers the first question. Yeah, you can use Atlas. Next question. What about Entity Framework? So if you're not aware, at the start of May, we released a new Entity Framework core provider that you can use. Now, at the moment, the Entity Framework provider doesn't support Atlas, but that's okay because we can run it locally and it'll work that way. So we've seen how to enjoy the goodness of Atlas, but actually you can also enjoy it locally. So this might look familiar to Jeff if he's watching. So this is his big bad blog.post service solution, which I'll link to a tutorial at the end. It's great. But essentially, this is using a local MongoDB deployment. You can go in, so Mongo Express is something that you can add on. So if we go back to the code a second, into his code, we can go into the program.here and just say with Mongo Express. So we'll be able to, in the dashboard, go into it and poke around. With data volume, we'll persist things between it and then again add database. And then this is using, go into this too much just for the sake of time, but I've given talks on this before and I've got tutorials on Entity Framework with MongoDB. So if you are curious, there's resources I can share at the end. But essentially, it's using a DB context like you'd expect. The Aspire hookup gives it access to our Mongo database, then it uses it as our post in our context, and then it will just act as you'd expect. So super cool. You have either Atlas or Entity Framework as a choice. We are working on Entity Framework support for Atlas eventually. It's just, you think about it, it's quite a new product. Only 7 months ago the Entity Framework provider didn't even exist. So, we're doing pretty good. We're working on improvements and new features as the community requests them. But eventually we will, but that's okay because it works great out of the box. If I have time at the end, I'll run this. But I'm not sure that we do. So the code is up on GitHub, on Jeff's GitHub anyway. And I said there's a link to the tutorial. Oh, we got you there. So we've seen the demo. But what else can you do? I just briefly want to take a couple of minutes to talk about what else you can do. So we have like a search here. So this is a Blazor application that looks at our sample movies database. And it's got, depending on which branch on GitHub you pick, it's either got Atlas text search to search deliberately by titles, or Atlas vector search to search against meaning of plots. If you can vaguely remember a film but can't remember the details, you can do it that way. Or we have support for Semantic Kernel. So if you're a fan of AI and Microsoft Semantic Kernel, which I love, I've also got this demo here, which uses Semantic Kernel with MongoDB, because guess what? That also has a connector. Woo! So basically, long and short of it really is that, .NET Aspire with MongoDB, whether it's Atlas or not, and hooking it up with all these other different products is just so easy to do. And actually, we can very quickly have a look at this. I think we've got time. So all it does is you just go in and say, I want to watch something about, I think it's music. it will then go ahead and get you some results, the top 3 results based on a relevancy score. And then you could keep up talking to it if you wanted to, like maybe something about sharks, I think is the next question. Because who doesn't like sharks? Although I think, yeah, I was expecting Jaws, but it gave me Moby Dick. But it's quite an old data set, so fair enough. Right, so I think we're good for time. So basically, I love the team anyway, but so hearts to you. But also as products, they work really well together, and it's only getting better. You can use MongoDB Atlas with Aspire to enjoy all the benefits available from the world's first developer data platform. But you can also combine it with a new entity framework core provider to use a technology you may already know. And you can expand on that even more with other things like search. I don't know why this is cut off. I'll update this. But anyway, yeah, long story short, it's great. You can expand on it with other things. So you can start to build up your Aspire app host. Essentially, you can just create something like a Blazor project that's hooked up to Aspire. Because Aspire is pointing to Atlas or your local MongoDB deployment, you can then achieve whatever you want. Anything that you can do with MongoDB driver in a normal project, you can do with Aspire, which I think is awesome. So I mentioned useful resources. So I will show a QR code in a second with a short link to remember, but it will take you to this gist page on GitHub where you've got all sorts of things. So you've got the code for this, you've got the code for Jeff's tutorial, the slides today. So if you want to go back and see anything, you can. We've also got the docs and the component, and I'm currently working on a PR to mention the Atlas support as well, because it currently doesn't actually mention that that's possible. The C# docs are wonderful for us. If you've got any questions, it's definitely the first place to go. Then we have Dev Center, which is our developer hub. So we have C# content all the time. And in fact, something on Semantic Kernel should be coming out in the next week or so. Then after that, we'll have stuff on Aspire, because we have a demo now, right? There we go. And then we've also got Jeff's tutorial, because I just think it's awesome. And keep an eye on this gist, because I'll constantly update it with new links to things I think are useful. So I will come back to this one in a second. I just want to quickly go to the next slide to just mention that, yes, like start your journey today on this collection. And, there is a survey. I don't think this is in my slides, no, but fill out the survey, say nice things, and visit this link. Thank you.
Okay, is my mic working? Luce, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear. My day is better already.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, everybody. We have been playing with the StreamYard, so I only got to catch like the last 10 minutes of that. Luce, so good to see you. I said at the beginning, and nobody could hear me, my best friend Luce, who I love, who's the best. Definitely fill out the survey. And then also we have our event survey. Everything is in the comments of the YouTube video. So the event survey, all of the Learn documentation and samples, links to everybody's talks, and these things will be uploaded later so we can go back and rewatch together. Maybe I'll live stream me watching this talk back when I was trying to figure out why the mic wasn't working. So thank you, everybody.